Hello and welcome to a brand new day of free to play here on Magic the Gathering Documents. Get the dish on the latest with me, Lord Rumfish. Uh, I would like to talk to you today about a problem Magic's been having for a while, and it's the price. As they say, the price is too damn high. But I wanted to lay out some specifics about how the price has changed over time. So, not getting into universes beyond other than the licensing fees. Um, I just wanted to talk about the speed of set releases and the price increases that have gone with them. So, here to help me, we're going to have a theoretical uh, consumer and their buying habits going from 2022 up to our current year. Now, I know our current year isn't quite finished out. I had to, you know, guesstimate some prices for Avatar. And these prices are kind of back of the napkin, rough estimates. I'm not trying to be totally specific, but I think they still illustrate my point. So, our theoretical consumer, which is based on me and the buying habits I used to have like every year in Magic, our theoretical consumer likes to buy one box of the major tentpole releases that come out every year. They like new cards. They don't like to buy things that are reprints so much. And they like to go to pre-release. So to keep things simple, our consumer in 2022 here on the left, they've bought, a box of Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. They also went to the pre-release. And that's true of, the things that are listed here, unless otherwise stated. So, they went to Kamigawa, they went to Streets of New Capenna, they did Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate, that was pricier. Dominaria United, they skipped Double Masters, Infinity, and Jumpstart. They hit up the Brothers War, and by the end of the year, if we calculate their draft boosters at 100 apiece, plus extra for Commander Legends Baldur's Gate, the pre-releases, and then we estimate that there are 3 ancillary products that they bought this year. What do I mean by ancillary? That could be like a commander deck. It could be some other thing that comes out that year. It could be a dual deck. It could be like a deck builder's toolbox. Um, it's just, fat pack. It could be some other thing that's magic related that they bought that year. So we estimate that they bought 3 things that year that were ancillary products that were $40 a piece. All told, 2022 had a price tag of $850 for the hobby, not counting things like, sleeves, deck boxes, storage boxes, travel costs, etc. None of that. We're just sticking to the products that Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro put out. This person bought $850 worth of stuff in 2022. So, same person, same buying habits in 2023. They skipped Dominaria Remastered. They don't want reprints. I was there, Gandalf. I don't need to go back. They did, Phyrexia All Will Be One. They went to the pre-releases as well. So they got like a draft box of this. They got a draft box, March of the Machine. They went ahead and bought Aftermath. There was no pre-release associated. They didn't get the worst price. They also did not get the best price on the box. They bought an epilogue booster box for $70. And it was above and beyond their other ancillary purchases that year. They participated with Lord of the Rings, paying approximately the prices it cost when it came out. They skipped the Commander Masters reprint set. Did Wilds of Eldraine, Lost Caverns of Ixalan. And all told, you add that up, plus 3 ancillary products at $45 each, because the price is creeping up a little bit every year. Wizards has been doing little price increases along the way. All of that added up that year was $965. It was a 14% price increase over 2022. Now, if you're a finance person, you know that a 14% increase is dramatic. That is a good rate of return if you have invested into a company and they grow 14% in a year. That's fabulous. That is beating the S&P 500 and stuff. So, in terms of the cost to you, the consumer, yeah, it's dramatic. It's a lot more than the rate of inflation. So, moving on from 2023. Now we're going to look at our same consumer in 2024. They skip Ravnica Remastered. They don't want reprints. They skipped Assassin's Creed. They just weren't interested. They like new cards, but the set wasn't that great. It didn't really appeal to them. They just skipped it. They did go in for Murders at Karlov Manor, Outlaws of Thunder Junction, Modern Horizons 3, which was a big price tag, Bloomburrow, Duskmorn, and Foundations. So for 2024, they had 5 play booster boxes, and this is one of the big differences in 2024. Draft booster boxes do not exist anymore. The former buying habits had to shift up to play booster boxes because draft boosters just don't exist. So we got 5 of those at $130, plus Modern Horizons 3, the pre-releases, 3 ancillary products at $50 each, because again, Wizards is ticking up their prices every year. All told, in 2024, this person's buying habits, they spent $1,290. Now that's a 34% increase over 2023 because this is $1,290 compared to $965. So that's a pretty dramatic amount. That's a third more than they spent the previous year. It's a 52% increase over the $850 that they paid in 2022. So they've spent more than half again what they paid just 2 years ago on the hobby. This is a really dramatic increase this year, due largely to play booster boxes. Now we get to 2025, our current year. So they skipped Innistrad Remastered. They participated with Aetherdrift, Tarkir Dragonstorm, Final Fantasy, which had a higher price tag, Edge of Eternities, Marvel's Spider-Man, which had a slightly higher price tag, not quite as much because it was tanking in value. Avatar: The Last Airbender, I don't know what the prices are going to be like when this comes out. I have opted to put them in between Final Fantasy and Spider-Man. So these numbers could certainly change. All of these are just rough estimates. All right. So adding up 2025, we've got the in-universe play booster boxes versus the universes beyond. I put that as UNB. UN for universe, BE for beyond. The UNB sets are 570, right? Averaging about $190 for a play booster box. The pre-releases are still around $40 for the in-universe sets. The Universes Beyond pre-releases were quite a bit higher. The ancillary products I put at $55 each because, again, the price is ticking up over time. Wizards has not been shy about stating this. They've declared, due to inflation and other reasons and blah, 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 that they're raising the prices. So, again, the ancillary products, I bump up another $5 here, and we get to $1,420 that our theoretical consumer has spent in 2025. Now, that's only a 10% increase over 2024. It's not as dramatic, but when you put it in the greater context of things, right? Where it's a 47% increase over 2023, right? That's about half again the $965 you were paying then, or a 67% increase over 2022, where you're paying about two-thirds as much as the $850 you were paying then. That's dramatic. And it's dramatic in a really short amount of time. Now, part of this is due to the straight up price increases. Part of it's due to the licensing fees of Universes Beyond. And part of it is simply a multiplier effect, which is that there are more sets coming out in the year that the person wants to participate in and be a part of than there used to be. You know, if you go back 10 or 15 years in the game's history, there'd be 3 or 4 sets that would come out in a year. There'd be some ancillary products and some other stuff, but there was a time when they didn't even do that, if you go back far enough, where if it wasn't a core set year, there might only be 3 sets that came out that year. And, you know, a booster box then was probably more like $90. Anyway, so the multiplier effect of having more sets come out per year and have the sets be new and exciting and impactful and interesting to where players want to buy into them. They want to be a part of it. It's this multiplier effect. And now this multiplier effect in 2025 is all hitting into standard. Right? It's not just, you know, choosing to buy into Battle for Baldur's Gate. It's not choosing to buy into Modern Horizons 3. Now it's, if you want to be a part of standard, if you want to be, you know, current with all the formats, not just 1 or 2, then you got to buy in. You got to pay attention to all of these things. And even, you know, dropping the price tag of some odd standalone sets like Modern Horizons 3, the price is still going up every year. Right? We didn't have one of those specialty sets that was like direct to modern or direct to legacy or whatever in 2025. The only thing we really skipped here was Innistrad Remastered. But just based on the way that this customer wanted to engage with the product and see the new cards and have ownership in the game, the price kept going up based on the way that their old buying habits were. Now, this person was me. I have a booster box of Murders of Karlov Manor over here. I was buying products still pretty regularly up until about 2023. But I've been priced out of the game. I have a family. I've got kind of a tight budget. You know, I only have so much disposable income that I can put towards this. And where I could kind of justify, you know, 3 purchases a year at $90 or whatever a long time ago, plus the pre-releases. So we'll call that, you know, more like $400, let's say. It's a lot different now. It's well ahead of the price of inflation. You know, you can't do an apples to apples comparison exactly because even though the value of money has declined with inflation, it hasn't declined that much. And this has been over a really short window of time. So this to me is probably the biggest problem facing Magic. This is the most dramatic issue that could destroy the game. Is burnout, just too many sets too fast. You don't have any time to do deck brewing or experience the draft format to its full capacity. Right? I feel like you're still learning a lot about drafting a set when you're like 10 or 12 drafts in. There are still archetypes you probably haven't drafted yet. There are still cards you may not have played with yet in the format. And you have to get those drafts in really quickly, and that usually costs money unless you're very good at drafting. It's hard to get above the break-even rate constantly for draft. You'll have your good drafts, and then, if you have like two or three bad ones in a row, either you fork over money or you're, in terms of arena, or you're done. In real life, of course, unless you're making a cube out of the cards and repacking them, then yeah, that costs money too. And in terms of like standard, or deck building, deck brewing, things are coming out so quickly at such a blistering pace. Okay, let me just talk about standard a few years ago, right? Let's go back to the era when Innistrad was still legal. Crimson Vow, Midnight Hunt. Let's talk about that era of standard. It was not that long ago. So there would be cards like the mythic rare cycle where you could do a kicker cost. It was like, the creature would be something like a 2/2 for 2 or a 2/3. And then you could pay an extra 3 mana multiple times and it would have an extra effect. The red one in that cycle could cast a spell of 3 mana or less from your graveyard. And the creature had haste and would get another +1/+1 counter on it every time you paid that extra 3 mana. So at 5 mana, you get a 3/3 with haste. It would flash back something for free from your graveyard that cost 3 mana or less, an instant or sorcery. Man, I was brewing around that card like crazy up until it rotated out of standard. I was casting stuff like the 2 mana sorcery that would like blow up a land, and they could the land's owner could find a basic land, put it into play, and shuffle, and then you would draw a card. It would cantrip, or interrogate the prisoners from the D&D set, where it could destroy an artifact, or you could exile the top 3 cards of the opponent's library and play one of them. I also used it in a mill deck where I paired it with Tasha's Hideous Laughter. I did all kinds of stuff with that card while it was in standard. Or another one from Innistrad was the Decayed Zombie tokens. There was a 2 mana enchantment that whenever a creature died, you or the opponents, you'd get a 2/2 Decayed Zombie token, only triggered once per turn. But you could trigger it on your turn and on the opponent's turn. So if you had instant speed removal, like you could trade in combat on your turn, get a Decayed Zombie, kill a creature on their turn, get a Decayed Zombie. It was fun. I was brewing around that thing, again, all the way up until it was out of standard. And those are cards from like just 1 or 2 sets. I feel like the depth of deck brewing that you can do now is greatly diminished because you're slammed with all these new cards, and it's like, well, do you ignore them? Do you keep trying to brew with these interesting cards from 2-3 years ago in standard, and you only pay attention to the new cards that interact with those? Or are you trying to keep all of the cards in standard in your head while you're brewing? Now, if you're someone who likes to brew in like, let's say, extended or modern or legacy, this might appeal to you. You love working with a huge pool of cards. You don't mind that experience, and so the constant influx happening in standard is maybe to your liking. I could see that. It seems like valid for some people, but it seems like for a lot of people that the influx is too much. That the creativity begins to feel stifled, um, because you're just kind of skimming the surface of every set that comes by. You're playing like, you know, 4 or 7 or 10 drafts instead of 20. You're brewing with the cards for a few weeks while they're new and standard until the next set comes out, and then it's on to the next thing. And maybe you hit up like the major archetypes, maybe you do a couple of weird builds, but then it's like, do you ignore the new release? Or do you jump into the new release and you skim the surface of it, and then the next release comes out and you skim the surface of it? So the speed of the releases is a problem, and the price of those releases is a problem. And this is not even getting into the issues I have with Universes Beyond. I am just talking about how much it costs and how fast the sets are coming out. I think Magic has a lot of self-inflicted wounds, headwinds of their own creation that it's dealing with right now. And I'm genuinely concerned about other people have mentioned this concept called the trust thermocline. I'm not enough of an expert on the trust thermocline to outline it here for you, but there are other excellent videos describing the trust thermocline and what happens to a business after they breach it. And I'm worried that Magic, just throwing more and more stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks at an increasing speed, at an increasing price, is going to risk breaking player trust and creating player burnout and eventually becoming a game that no one can afford to play. Or not no one. Not no one. Very few could afford to play. Do you agree with me? Do you feel like Magic is running headlong towards a cliff that it's created for itself? Let me back up a second and just say that I don't think Magic's going to die in the short term. I think Magic is indeed growing in the short term. And I think it will continue to do so uh, for a couple of sets here, for a couple of years here, as they, add a bunch of very popular properties in Universes Beyond, and there are influxes of new players that are happening. Is that sustainable? Will that continue? How long can it continue? How many of those new players will be buying cards? Like someone who joins next year, will they still be here 5 years from now? And will they still be having good Universes Beyond properties to add to the game 5 years from now? I just, I don't see how they can keep increasing the price and multiplying the number of sets before something breaks. And when that thing breaks, it could be something they can go back and fix, or it could be something dire, like the trust thermocline. So what do you think? Sound off in the comments. And until next time, never stop honing your critical thinking and empathy.